Hi, everyone. I'm Castor Maynard, host of Climb the Ladder. Today, I'm excited to share a really special conversation with someone who's had a big influence on me, Jamie Siminoff, the founder of Ring. Jamie is currently on his book tour, and I'm so grateful that he took the time to sit down and talk with me. I've known him and his family since I was a little kid, and as I got older, Jamie shifted from someone I grew up around to someone I genuinely admire, especially after I took an entrepreneurship class where I had to create my own product. I still remember watching him on Shark Tank and being struck by how he stuck with his ideas and pushed through setbacks. In this episode, we talk about his journey from growing up in New Jersey to becoming a breakthrough entrepreneur. We get into the challenges, the wins, and how he stayed focused on his mission of making neighborhoods safer. So let's jump in and explore an incredible story about chasing big ideas, learning from the hard parts, and putting in the work to make things real. Jamie, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Castor.
So I want to take it back a little bit. Growing up in New Jersey, what were you passionate about as a kid, and what did you kind of see yourself doing as you were growing up?
Um, when I was a kid, looking back, I would say I didn't know what I wanted to be.
Mm,
At least like in the moment, I didn't know what I wanted to be. Looking back, I definitely I loved tinkering. I was always in the basement building stuff. As from I had the remote control cars that I was like playing with, and I was like adapting them and changing them. And I remember tried to make like one that was like a kind of like a snowmobile one. Like I just kind of like just always tinkering with stuff and fixing stuff and pulling stuff apart. Definitely took a liking into sort of tinkering with bombs. I was making all sorts of different explosives, which is funny because my parents kind of let me do it. I don't really know what they were thinking, but you learn a lot by just kind of tinkering with stuff and playing
mm,
with stuff. Um, I was also very, in a weird way, I was very motivated by like sort of achievement of like a weird way of things. Like I was always working, like, and it wasn't. I don't think it was really like money, because I didn't really even know. Like, I mean, I don't think I had really anything to do with like it. There's nothing I could do with money, but there was something about like working and achieving stuff. I always worked hard. Like if my dad said like, "Oh, if you get some wood for the fire, I'll pay you, $5." My brother would get like one piece of wood and make like $1, and I'd like fill the garage with wood. He'd be like,
yeah.
"Holy shit!" So it's just like I was always kind of like doing stuff. I was just kind of always hustling. And I think it is like I think it's just part of like just in my DNA is just like I like to hustle. I like to fix things. And I guess I mean probably it's like I probably have ADD, so it's
Mm,
probably also just like a attention deficit, which is like I just can't sit.
yeah. So do you think that's kind of why you decided to major in entrepreneurship at Babson?
Well, I got and this is like luck is such a big part of life.
Mm,
Um, I didn't I mean back then also entrepreneur was like now it's more of a common word. Like you hear it
mm,
even in school. Like it's like you want to be an entrepreneur. Back then, I don't think no one really used the word. It was like a very like weird thing to sort of think about or be. And I was applying to mostly liberal arts colleges. So I was applying to like just sort of like a regular set of schools.
mm,
And it was just a lucky sort of break that I was driving. I used to drive this kid to school, and his dad was like a super successful guy who I kind of looked up to just because he was a super successful guy. Like, it's like they were just like a really rich family. And it was like, I don't know, I just felt like that was pretty cool. And I was in their kitchen waiting for him to come down to go to school. And I was telling the dad, I was like, the schools I was applying to. And I was like, I'm going to apply to Muhlenberg and this one. It was like all these like, they're fine schools, but just like a sort of the normal sort of Northeast liberal arts schools.
mm.
And I said Babson. And the dad's like, oh, Babson. He's like, it's like, I don't know. He's like, just seems like all these successful people I know come from Babson. And so I'm like, huh. So I get to school, go to the counselor's office, and I'm like, I want to go to Babson. And they're like, that's where I want to go. And they're like, okay. And so like then I like kind of put all my effort into going to Babson. But I didn't even know at that point, I didn't know that it was like an entrepreneurship school. I just knew that this guy said that that's where like successful people came from. Um,
What did it take for you to decide to specifically major in entrepreneurship? Because is that like a larger type of like degree? Is that something you see a lot of people that are entrepreneurs get a degree in it, or is it something you kind of can just do on your own?
See, I mean, I didn't know when I went to Babson, like I didn't even realize it, and I got there, and it's like you could choose finance, and you could choose, I guess, like marketing. I don't even know what the majors were. Um, and you could choose entrepreneurship. And I'm like, well, that one sounds great. So I chose entrepreneurship, which was just basically a basket of business classes. There was a few entrepreneurship, like actual entrepreneurship
Mm.
classes, like more about like starting a business. It ended up being a great foundation for me, not because people are always like, "Did you start a business because you studied entrepreneurship?" And it's like, no, but I think like for sure the Babson education gave me a lot of foundational pieces that helped when I did start a business. And I think I would have anyway, but I think, if I had gone to call it like a liberal arts college, and just done regular stuff, like even business law, like I took business law classes that were sort of more focused on entrepreneurship, and that really did help me, as I was doing stuff. It's just like the efficiency of that was great to like know certain things that I would not, wouldn't have known otherwise. So I think it was just like, again, in life, who knows, what, like how things would work out. But I do think it was a helpful sort of thing to do.
Yes, sir. So to transition a little bit, as an entrepreneur, as someone you call yourself a tinkerer. So what was the first like business or thing that you've came up with that you put your name on?
God, my first business. I mean, I was always kind of like, I was always doing little things. I was always like, again, I was always hustling sort of for like little things of money. I'd even shovel shit out of some horse stalls. Like we lived in kind of an area that had horses, and so
Mm.
on the way to school, I would do that. Yeah, I worked as like a landscaper. I was like a bellhop. I mean, the first thing I think I ever did that was like more like a startup or entrepreneurial thing was I tried to sell these things called paramotors. And a paramotor is like a parachute with a backpack motor on it, like a propeller, and you could fly around. And we lived in this, again, like it was a pretty rural area, so it was like kind of a cool thing you could do there. And I went and found all these people that sort of had money that maybe could buy one, and people thought it was kind of a cool thing. And so we went to a friend's field and did like that. I like asked the parents if we could do it, and like we went back there, and this guy came like from the company and like did like a trial thing, and everyone's like, "This is the coolest thing ever!" And the guy's flying around, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, we got to buy this!" And the guy lands and breaks his leg. Um, and so I was pretty quickly out of the paramotor business from that. Like that was like
Sounds
a
like
that was a,
legit
that was
cool.
a that was an in and out. That was a round trip business. That was pretty quick. Um, and then like I was always kind of trying to do something. I always had like some angle on something that I was trying to do.
Mm,
In college, I sold all the like stereos and TVs and stuff on campus. Um, so I had like always had something going on.
definitely. So moving on towards like the Ring section of things, what inspired you to write the story about Ring now of all times?
Um, yeah, I would tell the story to people, and I felt like that the Ring story. I mean, every entrepreneurial venture, like adventure, I should say,
Mm,
is pretty crazy. I mean, usually when you really talk to people that have built something of high impact, it's usually just a crazy story. Like there's usually just like crazy things that have happened. I think Ring had even more sort of craziness to it, and more kind of like, I think it's interesting because I think it was like the band of misfits doing it.
mm,
And it was kind of like, in some ways it's like in some ways it's like an accidental company, because we really did just kind of throw together people that just worked hard, hustled, and sort of made it happen. And so I do think it's like it's a great story of the American dream. I also think like Shark Tank being a part of it makes it also kind of interesting that Shark Tank, I think, has been such a big part of getting people, I mean, all around the world, because there's different Shark Tank versions. But
mm,
for the US Shark Tank version, it certainly has inspired a lot of kids in the US, and I'll meet them now that grew up with Shark Tank. And now they want to, they've seen that they can be an entrepreneur. They've seen that they can start a business. They've been inspired by it. And so I think it kind of, like, a lot of reasons, it felt like it was just like a good thing to do. It also almost like in a therapy way for me, there's just like a lot of trauma that I went through building Ring. I mean, it's just like a crazy thing.
mm.
And kind of it let me kind of unpack a lot of it. So it did feel like a little bit even like kind of a therapy session to go through this and kind of think about things now, of the whole journey. So
Yeah, I mean, the journey is amazing. As someone who's read the book, it is would recommend to anybody. But there are so many ups and downs and like curves of the journey. Like it feels like a story somebody wrote almost.
and that's
So,
and I do think that's what I think it's why people should not be entrepreneurs unless they want to, like, really want to be an entrepreneur. I think it's not, um it's like, I would say it's not a career that you should choose lightly, because while my I think the Ring journey is probably filled with maybe a little bit more craziness, and it's probably just matches to my personality of,
mhm,
like, I just kind of create, I think, a little more waves in what I do. Um, I think most of them are like that, and I think that, you should be prepared for that, and you should also be wanting to do that in terms of, like, you should feel that, like, whatever you're doing is important enough that it's worth doing that, because a lot of times it doesn't turn out like Ring. I mean, most of them don't turn out with that kind of success, and so, um, I think you should, like, it's I sometimes worry that entrepreneur is thrown around too much as like a career, and it is, it's a pretty brutal experience.
mhm. So knowing this, someone still wants to be an entrepreneur. What advice would you give them to chasing that goal?
I mean, I think, AI is going to make it even more, like, I think the Ring story is even more important, if you look at it in a world of AI, because as information gets democratized, it's sort of less and less about being, like, if you're the Harvard, Yale, Stanford, it's like, it is going to be grit, resilience, hard work, and kind of figuring out where these opportunities exist. But I think it's going to come down a lot more to, I think, just like human horsepower,
Mhm,
because everyone now has access to intelligence. Intelligence used to be, like, 10 years ago, intelligence was sort of locked up. I mean, like, you had to hire, if you wanted to do something with it that required incredible sort of intelligent horsepower, you had to hire, like, engineers, for example. Like, you had to find the best engineers to build something. We're already seeing that you can build a lot of code and projects now with AI,
mhm.
just with natural language prompting, and that's today. In 5 years, so if you're thinking about, if you're 18, and you're going to go to college, by the time you get out of college, probably the most complex engineering tasks will be done with natural language, in sort of a very, like, sort of, normal conventional way, like, not even like, you'll be able to type in, I want to build a, and you'll have it built. And so in a world where that's democratized, where anyone can access building an iPhone app, well, then it's not like, there's no wall between you and building an iPhone app, but it's, how do you get it out there? How do you get people on it? That's, it's the hustle. And so I do think the hustle, the grit, the resilience, things are going to change for sure. AI is definitely, I mean, it is going to change the world. It, I think no one knows where exactly it's going to go. And because of that, you need to just be set up for being able to be resilient and change as well.
Mhm. It's taking care of, like, the more hard skill part of things. Maybe now people need more soft skills, like the grit, the determination, stuff like that.
I think that's exactly right. I think that's exactly right. And again, I think that if you look in the last 10, 20 years, a lot of things existed and companies were built because of those harder skills, like being a very sophisticated iOS engineer allowed you to build something that no one else could build.
Mhm,
I don't think that wall is going to be there anymore. And so I think you just have to figure out now where to go. And if you wanted to be an engineer, it's going to be much harder to have, you know, engineers are probably not going to make the money they made before, because, sort of anyone can build this stuff.
you can get a
It's
compute
always going to be a few extremes. Like, I think it's like, are there going to be any engineers? Of course. Like, there's always going to be some need for some super high end of something, but the amount of it is going to be completely changed, I think.
mhm, yeah, definitely. So, another question I wanna go into about Ring. When you talk about Ring's mission, it was never just the doorbell technology, it was about making neighborhoods safer. Why do you think that was so hard in the beginning to pitch on Shark Tank or pitch to other places? And why was it so hard for people to understand that idea back in 2016 or 2017?
Yeah, so the mission stuff, if you have a big mission for want to change the world,
Mm,
um, you have to be sort of thoughtful about how you put that out to the world. Because if you just say like I'm gonna change everything, I'm gonna make change the climate again. Like if you just said that, people would be like, easy caster. It's like take your steps. But so I so with Ring, we very early saw like in the development of it, like we sort of like accidentally found, because I made the doorbell for myself being in the garage. Like it wasn't the first thing was not to just sort of stop crime, but I all of a sudden was like, wow, this doorbell actually, when people come up to it, you get its presence, and by giving presence to the home, you're actually reducing crime because people are trying to see if someone's home. And so like this is like there's a whole new set of inventions that could be done around the home and with new technologies to sort of stop crime, to prevent crime from happening, and how you could do it. And so we sort of stumbled into that. But I was also, and looking back, it was smart that I was aware enough that if I said like this product is going to stop crime in neighborhoods, I would lose credibility. It was like it would be too soon. And so I had to sort of get it out there, get people using it. And then we use the examples of it. And we still do that even today. Like we still launch features and do things that we're a little bit humble when we launch it.
mm.
And then you use the examples of it working. And then once it's working, then people they're like, holy shit, like this could change the world. Wow, you are doing this. And so I think it's again, another good lesson of, um, it's how you want to sort of communicate things out there. Now with the team, like when someone would come and interview with us, I would say, here's what it's trying to do. Here's what we're trying to do. If you want to, if you agree with that, come work with us. If you think that that's bullshit, don't work with us. Like don't even come.
So that's kind of more of a show not tell when you're showing it to people, because you don't want to be like, wow, we're changing the world with this. You want to give them a product and them say, oh wow, that's making everybody safer. That way
Exactly.
you're not coming off as cocky, they're coming off as people who love your company.
Yeah, and it's less about the cockiness at this point. When you're in that sort of place, it's more about the credibility.
Mm.
Uh, like it was almost like, a door, sort of a smart doorbell at the time was like a joke in a way. It was like a doorbell that has a camera. Like that's like people would literally laugh when I say like I'm building. Like I used to, my party joke used to be like I'd go before people like knew what Ring really was. We'd be at a party or something. I'd meet someone and I'd be with my wife Erin, and they'd say like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "I make doorbells," and they'd laugh. Like I mean, literally like laugh. And it was always like a party joke because it was like that's actually what I did. Like I made doorbells, and now it's not so funny, but like at the time, it was like making doorbells was like a funny thing. So if I said like I make doorbells and we're making stopping crime, people would be like, oh, like that's you're totally insane. And so you had to sort of work your way up. But then yeah, we did show not tell. We started to actually have things happen where we were stopping crime, catching crime, fighting, doing it, and then people understood what it was, how it could like really change things, and that then it went from there. So
Yeah, definitely. So, what was the culture like at Doorbot during your early days? Because you talk about the culture of the people that you try and hire, like the gritty, you don't care as much about perseverance. You hired someone off of Craigslist that became an amazing designer. So how did you kind of use the culture that you wanted for Doorbot to kind of go through your hiring process? And how did that culture kind of evolve as Doorbot grew into Ring and got bigger and bigger?
I mean, we tried to keep it. I mean, still try to keep it today, but it's harder as you get really big. Like you do become like a big company, and you try as much as you can. I mean, Andy Jassy just said in the last quarterly call on Amazon that like we're going to try to be the world's largest startup like
Mm,
culture, and so like but it is hard to do that. Um, but for us, it was really just what is someone capable of, not who are they, was really the most important thing for us. So if someone came and said like I want to try to work here, I'm gonna like work my ass off, like okay, great, and it's like you just gave him the shot. And so I one of our like ways we looked at it was we hire fast and we fire faster. So
Mm.
like, if someone wanted to come and work, like I think I'm the worst interviewer of all time. I have no idea. I'll interview someone for a job. Like my track record is literally 50-50. Like it's just like half the time I'm right and half the time I'm wrong. And so what I'd rather do is someone who's passionate, who wants to come in, who says they'll work their ass off, hire them, and if they're great, then keep them. And if they're not great, then send them on their way. And it's also like when they're not great for us, it doesn't mean they're not great people or they're not great. Like it just means that they're not great for us. Like they didn't fit our, like that key didn't fit the lock. And so it's not that it's like we are unique. Every company is unique. And so I think it's also a good lesson as you're sort of going out and finding a career and doing stuff is if you're at a place that it's not working, it's not always that like, it's not that they're bad or you're bad. It's just like there's a fit thing. And so you want to find the place that fits you and they want to find a place that you fit them. But definitely I'd say one of our superpowers was hiring like people off of Craigslist. I mean, like literally finding just people that were kind of had missed, I'd say, the big opportunities of jobs,
Mhm.
but had passion, were intelligent enough to sort of do it and go. Um, on the sort of, I'll say like there are areas where you did need, if you had someone trying to do firmware, like you needed them to know how to code. I mean, like
Yeah.
it's not just passion, but I'd always take passion over experience in any job, and still, by the way, still do. And I think again with AI, I now go back to I think it's getting there again where you want to hire people that are more open to a new way of thinking and have not been so like have not cemented their career around exactly how to do something because everything's going to change again. And so it's not, and I say that it's not age, it's more like how people think. You want people that are sort of open to thinking differently and sort of doing things differently. And a lot of times that's sort of the people that have been kind of tossed away.
So you think that kind of that mentality of like working hard, all those things, like that trumps experience when you're in the like when you're hiring somebody. If you see that person and they don't have all the experience in the world, but they are so motivated and just dedicated to giving it a chance, you'll just give them that shot
That's
every.
I would like to think we give it every time. I mean, again, as we get to be a bigger company, you have to get more processes and things, and at Amazon and stuff. But I do try still to hire people. And again, I think with AI, we're gonna even put a bigger push on it as a company, which is finding really just like passionate people because they have everyone now has access to engineers. Like they could just
Mhm.
type it into the cloud. And so what do you want is you want people that are finding those opportunities, that are finding the problems, that are fixing the problems, that are, working harder than everyone else because that's going to be the differentiator.
So you guys are kind of looking for like those intangible things that you can. If you look at
Yeah.
like one of those role players on NBA court, like these guys are like scrappy, not the tallest. Like you look for those intangible things and people who are going to go contribute to your team.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you want those like the sort of the everything ones versus the
Mhm.
like um and it, versus like if it's a draft pick thing, it's like you'll take the person who didn't even get drafted but wants to work harder,
Mm.
at practice than the sort of the number one draft pick, which a lot of times you see like these number one draft picks, a lot of times they just kind of don't make it.
Mhm. Yeah, and you see those undrafted free agents that just rise up and they find a good culture. I know we're going through the basketball analogy because I'm a basketball guy. You're a
I,
basketball
I,
guy.
I love it. I think Austin Reeves, I think was like a
Yeah,
pretty, like he was one of those guys like was kind of overlooked and is now just he's incredible.
MVP Reeves this year.
Yeah.
I was gonna say like the Heat system. They find all these undrafted players and they get them all together. This little like motley crew. That's kind of
Yeah.
how like when I read your book, I kind of see you kind of describe that team. Bunch of just hardworking guys. So I have another question that I want to kind of ask about the whole Shark Tank experience. Like I just want to just curious what your experience was like with that. If there's anything you want to talk about that maybe we don't know about your Shark Tank from just watching it.
Um, I mean, Shark Tank was, I mean, for the Ring probably would not exist without Shark Tank. The amount of credibility and awareness, at the time the show was so big,
Mm,
and so to be on Shark Tank at that time, it probably was bigger than having a Super Bowl commercial for a company like Ring. So it was just it was a huge event for us. I did want to get money. I mean, as you read the book, you saw like we were out of money. Like I
mm,
wanted to get money, but but being on it like was incredible for us. But it was such a tough time for us to be on it because we had a product that was really challenged in how it was
mm,
working, and they wanted us to show it on the show live. And even today, probably doing Ring on that show would be tough because of all the other interference of the you have hundreds or even, I don't know, maybe 1,000 things in that studio that are putting off interference of things, lights,
mm,
other wireless things, cameras. I mean, there's just so much electronic stuff in there that's giving you problems. And so to do a live demo of the product was like really like that was one of the toughest things. And they wanted us to do it in the show. And it's they call it like live to tape, which is it's taped, but it's basically live. Like they don't stop while you're going.
mm,
And so yeah, it was a I mean, stressful, tough. Like we almost didn't get one to work. We got it to work when we got on, and so if you watch the episode, like it does work on there, but it like, I mean, that was as again, like super lucky that that one did work. And, and so it was just like a crazy event. And then one of the sort of, you know, like we had thought then if we got on that was like kind of like, you'd get these sales from it. And so the first 24 hours, we got some sales, but it definitely wasn't as much as we had hoped for.
mm,
Um, and so it's like kind of 24 hours later, it's like everyone's like, "Oh, so great." And I'm like, "Yeah." Like, but it's like we're shit. Like we didn't get like what we needed. So it was still like really like not good. And then like another 24 hours, like we did the sales we did in the previous, so like it stayed up and it was like, huh, okay, that's better.
mm,
And then like day 3 was like the same, and it's like, "Oh, that's good." And so it just kept going, which is people watching it, I guess, recorded. People just like would buy the product afterwards. And so it ended up being, a massive impact of sales and really did save us. I mean, we needed that injection, of like, it was like that, just that last bit of like extra push,
mm.
an artificial push to get us just kind of over the hill. Um, and because no investor was going to come in, we were just too, at that point, we just didn't have enough of like a formed anything to get like a real investor in. And so we just needed like a little more to get to a place to get an investor. And Shark Tank gave us like just enough of a bump to get there.
Yeah. I think also with you kind of talk about a lot Ring or Doorbot at the time. It's kind of like was a product that maybe if you try to launch it a couple years earlier, people weren't going to be ready for it.
Nope.
Do you think that kind of giving it that push like through TV was something that kind of helps because that's kind of more of like a
Yeah. So I'd say the two things are like you separate the two things a little bit. So it definitely, the push through TV like was incredibly helpful, and it sort of was
mm,
able to like you're able to spend 12 minutes sort of showing someone what you have on national TV to a huge part of like the US. Like that was incredible.
mm,
But the other side of the timing is like Ring, Doorbot, even today, like what do we need to have on the other side is we need someone to have a smartphone. And
yeah.
so if you go back in time when we launched Doorbot, the smartphone market, I think it was like 13 or 15% of people had a smartphone, something like that, maybe
Mm,
20%. So it was like people were getting smartphones, but it was still like feature phones they called them, which were like these like push button phones.
yeah.
Um, were still like huge. And so if you didn't have like more iPhones basically and Androids coming in the market, then you needed like that side for Ring to work. We needed like like if it was a remote control, like you needed like both sides.
Mm,
So with Ring, we only sold one side. We sold the camera, but we didn't sell the sort of the device you held in your hand that you already had. And so if we'd launched it years earlier, there just would not have been enough people that would have had the sort of the smartphone device to
yeah.
be able to see it. And so we like and then if you had launched too long after that, too many people like me would have come out. And so you would like, again, people did launch. I mean, like there's competitors that launch products at every sort of stage while we've been going, some to mixed success, but they never like had the success Ring had, because Ring had already been out there. And so
Yeah.
like, it's kind of like you needed to kind of slot like right in that middle, which is still when it was growing and it wasn't exactly understood what was happening, but sort of not too early and not too late. And it's really luck because like no one knew how fast smartphones were going to grow at that time. I mean, maybe some people thought, but no one really knew.
Yeah, it was very important. I feel like another guest that I've had on was Chris Lockhead, and he's very good with marketing. And he has a book about category design. And so, kind of what I'm seeing when I'm reading your book is you're hitting it right at the right time of the smartphone industry being big enough, and your doorbells being ready to sell. And kind of you guys Ring became so like dominant in that category that as soon as a competitor launched something else, when you heard video doorbell, it was synonymous with Ring. So you automatically, in the book, I remember them talking about this. You had competitors like running ads, and all the ads would do or
Yeah.
make your sales better.
Which I mean, that is really one of the like it is such a funny story because it's true and it's like I kind of forgotten about it. And it's like when I kind of was part of doing the book was like fun as you go back and you see some of these things that like you kind of forgot about. And if you go back in time and put myself in that position, like we see all of a sudden I'm like watching TV and a competitor ad comes on TV for like, and the ad looks just like we shot it. Like it's like so like copy, like I don't know if they copied us exactly, but it certainly looked like our ad. Like, and it's a competitive product, and you're so like you die, like you can't. Oh my God, someone else is gonna take our business. They're doing our game plan. And then you realize that like like a week or two later the person running all the analytics and the marketing for me came to me and said like every time they run their ad we're getting we're getting basically sales as if we did the ad ourselves. And it was like I mean, it's so crazy. But to your point, once Ring became the thing, when you saw when whatever you saw there, you were like, that's Ring. And so you went and bought Ring and you didn't even, and people are distracted and TV's 30 seconds. And so even what was, and it's a good lesson. If you're gonna try to build something, build your own way, like build your own, when you just try to copy something, a lot of times like you're ending up hurting yourself. And if their ad had been totally different, then maybe they would have stood out in a way that would have been different. But because the ad felt like a Ring ad, people sort of took it like it was a Ring ad. And because they're distracted and doing other things while they're watching TV, it just reminded them to buy Ring, which was the sort of the thing they had been seeing.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how it works like that, where they because they kind of copy off the test, they don't do as well. It's a
Exactly.
it's definitely a funny way that life has. Um, another question I wanted to ask you is, throughout Ring, there were a lot of setbacks, like not finding a deal on Shark Tank, which probably was a good thing for you in the end. But the Christmas Eve crisis with a lot of faulty doorbells, or the ADT lawsuit. So throughout the book, there are so many ups and downs, kind of like a roller coaster. I just wanted to ask, like, what was your mindset when you were dealing with all this adversity? Because it seemed like throughout all of this, you were able to make these decisions and like keep a very cool, calm, and collected head on a lot of the time, except for certain couple emails here and there.
I
But
did. Overall, it was pretty good. Yeah, keeping it. I think like anything at the top level boils down to being similar. And so I think if you want to go to a sports analogy, it's like
mm,
how does someone shoot the game winning 3-pointer with zero point 0.1 seconds left? Like, how do they take that pressure? And I think they take it by they don't in the moment. They're like not even realizing, like they're just doing their job.
mm,
I think. I mean, again, I certainly am not an athlete, but I think if I look at like what I was doing, looking back, like reading the book, I get more anxiety than I had when I was actually in those situations directly, because in the situation, it's like I'm focused. I need to figure this out. I have to do it. So it's like I'm not like it's it's almost like it's more anxiety. It's like feels more emotional when you're on the outside looking at it, which I think again would be like to the game winner is the audience is dying, but the person who's in it, like that's what they train for. That's their
Yeah.
job. Like that's what they do every day. And so like they're gonna go out and do their job. And like that's what they have to do. And so I think for me it is like I have the ability to go out there, and when I'm in that the stress of that stuff, I don't see it in the moment, which you can't, because if you did, it would just like you just collapse. I mean, there's no way you get through these things, and you have to think through them. So I think it is just like you just have to sort of stay calm and get through it. And that's also why I was saying like not everyone should be an entrepreneur. It's
Mhm.
really like you have to be right for it. One of the tools I use, and this is where mission was good, is I would always tell the team when we're going through these things, like we're here to make neighborhoods safer. And if we fail, if the company fails, like we still succeeded because we tried to do something that was worthwhile.
Mhm.
So it was like it gave you like a little bit of perspective of like, let's still kind of do the right thing. Let's try to you always try to do the right thing. Then you're not flailing, or because you're like, if we're gonna, I don't like, if we're gonna fail, let's like fail gracefully. Like let's fail with grace. Like let's fail correctly. Let's not fail like kind of squealing and screaming. And so, and I think the mission really helped with that, because I'm like, we're trying to make neighborhoods safer. And it's,
Mhm.
even if this business ends up going out of business, like at least I tried to build a business that made neighborhoods safer. Like I did try to do that.
Yeah, you had that mission behind everything you did. You
Yeah,
weren't, like, really working for yourself at that point. Everything that you did was
exactly.
under the goal of making neighborhoods safer. So, yeah,
Exactly.
that's a cool way how your business evolves and it grows into, like, you really have a bigger purpose, and that gives you that motivation to keep going through that.
Yeah.
When you talk about, like, not everyone should be an entrepreneur and that you have this ability to stay, like, calm and collected in these moments, is that something that necessarily, like, you've learned over time, or do you think you were just born with that, like, able to handle things in situations like that?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. Like I've gotten better at that over time. I've definitely gotten a lot better at that, I'd say, because I've gotten to this point where I just sort of have this kind of like, it's going to work out or it's not going to work out. But
Mhm.
I know it's not like, it's like, I know it's not going to work out if I freak out.
Yeah.
And what's funny is my personality is actually pretty like, it's like pretty big. Like I'm in meetings, I'll yell, I'll like, but that's for when we're trying to figure something out or do something, like, or like I want to get like, so like I'm very passionate and that, but when it comes to like a real problem, like something that's like an existential problem, I just go into this like quiet, thoughtful, like go through the checklist, because I
Mhm.
I kind of like know that, like, again, I'd rather die doing everything I could have done correctly than to sort of go down with like, because it's like you look at like a lot of, if you do like extreme sports or something like scuba diving, like the reason most people sort of like sad, like the accidents in like scuba diving are because people freak out. And as
Yeah.
soon as you freak out, you like do 10 stupid things that like there's no chance to sort of survive. Whereas like if you actually like, if something bad happens, if you, instead of freaking out, if you're like, okay, like I can't breathe, I'm underwater, this is dangerous. Like, what are the next steps? Like you actually can get yourself out of a lot of these things. The same thing with like flying a plane is like, pilots are like really, we use the analogy in the book, but pilots really are the best at this. Like a wing could be ripped off the plane, and a pilot's just like, wing is ripped off the plane. Let me get my checklist. And they'll like pull out like a paper checklist and like go through it. Like they're just very calm and collected no matter what, because they know that like if they freak out, like it's going to end badly. But like if they go through the checklist, a lot of times like that's how you figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. It's like always going to the checklist. You can't get too overly emotional and respond that way. You have to just think, what's the next order of operation? So I think that's amazing. I think that's definitely the amazing piece of advice for someone who is gonna go through some stressful things or has like I mean, obviously in life there's going to be like a million things that are gonna go not as planned. Which I mean that happened in your journey as well. But being able to handle things like that methodical approach is an
But I think it
amazing.
is like, it's the thought of like failing correctly. Like if it
Mhm.
is gonna fail, if it is, if you're not gonna succeed, if it's whatever the situation is gonna go wrong. I think having it go wrong with you doing the right thing is better. Is like that's the
Mhm.
best sort of possibility. It's like the best outcome versus like doing the like trying to sort of be desperate in the end, because that's like, it's almost like even then if it goes right, it's still sort of going to be wrong. So I think it's like that. And that's again, that's always how I've always
Mhm.
looked at it.
So you're very big like into the process. Like you think your process is the most important thing. And if you've had a good process, that will if you have success, that's great. But if you don't, it's still great because you went through the whole process.
Yeah, I think that's where also, again, mission comes into it is, if you're doing something that if you're just there to make money, then money's the only goal. Then like literally, if you don't make money, you fail.
Yeah.
And I think that's where like doing something other than just making money, and you don't have to be like, you don't have to be Gandhi. You don't have to like save, people from starvation. Like, I mean, if you figure out a business that does it, like, please go do that. But if you're doing something you at least feel like the world is better because this business exists, then you'll feel better about how you would like you have a better sort of process of how you attack it. You'll have a better way of looking at it. And you'll also have sort of again, it's like, and then even if it doesn't make money, which is like, would be the judgment of most businesses, like success or failure, you can still feel like you were a success because you tried to
Mhm.
do something that was good. And I think it does, you then make better decisions along the way because of that. I mean, it's like with Ring, another analogy we used to use, I'd say like, I'd rather be a giant hole in the ground in Santa Monica that's so big no one could ever fill it if we went out, than sort of be just like a crappy little company that's sort of just scraping by. And so,
Mhm.
because businesses, you have to make a lot of decisions. So one of the decisions as you're building a company like Ring is, do you try to take the technology and sell it to another company to have them also sell it? So do you try to like, which would be less margin and less whatever? And it's like, yeah, but we would have been, if we had done that, we'd be like a shitty company that's maybe surviving just sort of like, but like barely. And so it's like, I would say like, I'd rather, and so when we had offers like that come to us, which we did, I was able to like clearly say, you know what, I'd rather like go and build the mission and do this and be big, or I'd rather be like a big disaster. But like to sort of just like limp along, and doing sort of the wrong thing, like things that are not really sort of in line with what we're trying to do. Like it's not interesting. And so again, I think like when you start to like set those missions and set those things out, it helps you to set yourself up for what you really want to do.
So when you decided, kind of on similar track as this, when you finally decided to sell to Amazon at the end of your book, you had thought about selling earlier. You were making all of these decisions and thinking about this, and you realized that if you didn't sell when you did, you could have grown the company and probably sold it for more. But where did the decision feel like to sell to Amazon come from, and how did that decision fit in with like your mission towards Ring?
So I did feel that Amazon, and they did. Now it's been 7 years. I felt like Amazon would back our mission. And again, if the most important thing was to build the mission, it was, where's a better place to put the business in the balance sheet than Amazon? Like, like if you think they're going to back your business and your whole business is about getting big to help make the mission bigger, well then like you sort of have to sell to Amazon, like if you
Yeah.
can. Um, and but we also had, because we were a hardware business, it's a very like, as the business grew, in fact, the growth of the business is actually what killed us. Every when you went from growing at, from 170 million to 480 million in 1 year, which is what we did. When you're
Mm,
doing 170 million, you had to order more than 170 million dollars of parts for next year. So like all like, not even your profit, but like more than your revenue, you had to order in parts already for next year to grow, because you can only sell what you have. Like you can't
mm,
sell, like, it's like physical product. Like if it doesn't exist, you can't sell it. And so we were just kind of always kind of going out of business, always cash flow. Is like cash flow is always a problem. And so it was the decision to sell to Amazon was, let's put ourselves in a place where we can back the mission with a bigger balance sheet, grow faster, do more for our neighbors, which is what we call our customers. And it was the right thing. I mean, looking back now, how the capital markets were. I mean, again, like this is now looking back, meaning like you can literally see exactly how every year went since we sold.
mm.
Yeah, we would have been actually fine, and we probably would have built a really big company on our own. But if the capital markets had changed and seized up, which they have in the last, like, the like 2 years ago they did, um, if that had happened like that year before, like when we sold, like we would have been dead. And so
Mm.
you only, like, again, like just looking back now, that you would have been fine, but it's it was too close of a call for me. And so I think it still was the right decision, even knowing that, yeah, I think the business would be a 50 or $100 billion business today if it was, public and on its own. Um, but yeah, but I can't, from a regret side, for sure. Like,
Mm,
I mean, it's like I'm a human being. Like, would I like to have a $50 billion business that's public right now that I own? Yeah, like that wouldn't be terrible. Like,
mm,
I wouldn't hate it. But the other side is, you can't. I mean, it's only because I know what happened that like that's okay. And yeah, it could have also been a $0 business, like happened to a lot of people that I know that got offers to sell their companies and they went to zero.
so that's just another calculated decision. I mean, I feel like at the time, I mean, like you can never know what's going to happen in the future. So if we're going off of we're doing things towards the mission of Ring, keeping the
Yep.
mission alive is probably the most important thing. So you have to make a
And
decision to go along with
and
that.
it did do that. Like it did do that. Like we're over 100 million cameras in the market, out in the field today. We're like definitely one of the largest home security companies in the world today. And so it did like mission accomplished on what we were trying to do. And so it was, from that side, at least it was the right decision. I mean, what would have been the saddest thing is selling it to Amazon and then it not succeeding inside of Amazon, which also, also sometimes you sell to companies and things don't do work out. Amazon actually has a great track record because of how they handle it, but that would have been really sad.
Yeah. So for my wrap up, I always ask a question to everybody. It is, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self? So I am curious to hear your answer towards this.
So is this my 18-year-old self today if I was 18, or is this back when I was 18? Because
Hmm. I
uh,
think let's say today because things
yeah,
are a lot different
I
nowadays.
think that's true. I really do think that AI. I'm not someone who's into hype, and I don't like to sort of every technology that comes out. I'm not always like, oh, this is going to change the world. I
Mm,
do think AI is one that is going. It is already changing the
mm.
world. So I do think it does change how I would.
These questions always lead back towards AI. Whenever we're talking about something future leading, this
I,
this question always like goes towards AI, which kind
if
of
I was
proves.
18, I would say the world is definitely unknown. It is certainly changing, like right now in front of your face. I would say go to college and have a great time. Don't stress out about the college you go to. Go to one that you want to be around great people, meet great people. I think the human side of things is going to be more important in the future. Again, because of AI. If I look at what AI does, democratizing sort of information and intelligence, what exists that's outside of that is EQ. It's all the human side of things. So I would sort of focus on doing that and just trying to look at and understand where the world's sort of going so that I could figure out where I could add value to it
Mm,
in the future. But again, I would say, stay resilient, just work harder than everyone else, because in the end, I just feel like that's, if I look at the past couple 100 years of success of people, of humans, like the ones that make it are the ones that just seem to always work harder. There's always going to be people to get lucky, of course. But like the chance of you just sort of hitting a lottery ticket just by scratching one is not that good. So work really hard. Um, but I think it is stay more resilient and gritty than sort of ever before.
yes. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Jamie. Thank you everyone for watching. I will see you guys next week.